the administration's view on Greenland is the same as for South America, and that is that China and Russia are trying to establish footholds there for both strategic and resource reasons. So the administration sees the Western Hemisphere as the hemisphere that we need to absolutely dominate in. Those areas are in our hemisphere. That is driving a lot of what I think is his desire to be recapturing the strategic initiative, let's call it, in Venezuela. It was a haven for China and Russia to be in our hemisphere, influencing things that are happening. Same thing with Greenland. So the administration feels that this would or could be a strategic disadvantage if China and Russia were able to start operating in and around the Greenland area, and they're just trying to counter that. It's really no more complicated than that. Yes, there are strategic implications for the Golden Dome, the missile defense that has to happen. You've probably heard about that in the news. But the reality of this whole Western Hemisphere thing, which includes the Greenland, is that the administration, and frankly, I agree with this, we can't allow our adversaries to establish a foothold in our hemisphere to then be able to very closely influence what's happening around the United States of America and our other allies in the Western Hemisphere. Now, to take this back to the Venezuela thing, you got to understand that with the USMCA coming back up for review, Canada exports a lot of that heavy oil to both the United States and to China. Now, Canada is capacity constrained with exporting that heavy oil out to China because it can only go out of one port in Canada. So Canada really relies on America to be buying a lot of that, and then it has to be processed down in the southern states, Louisiana and Texas area. And if the Venezuela oil, which is that same heavy oil, can come back online, it's really going to give the administration a leverage point over Canada, because if we start sourcing that heavy oil from somewhere else, they can't physically export enough and they'll end up with supply. And we know from supply and demand, if there's more supply than there is demand, the price is going to go down. And so I think that the administration is really using a lot of this Western Hemisphere dominance as a way to also influence the review of USMCA. So Greenland kind of falls into that a little bit. Western Hemisphere dominance, establishing a foothold there, keeping our adversaries out, and helping with some military stuff. Now, 2 weeks ago, there was all sorts of consternation about whether we were going to take it by force. I think that's behind us now. But the interesting thing, again, love them or hate them, I get a 50-50 chance there of, talking to somebody that feels one way or the other, just know it, is that this administration starts out with some sort of absurd request for something that gets shot down and says no. And then the rhetoric gets ramped up and everything else. And then as a settling point to bring it all back down, ends up getting what it was that he asked for in the first place. I think the Greenland thing ends up being, we end up leasing land there, putting some bases in there. I mean, we've got a lot of bases around the world. We've got Guam, and there's places that the military has bases all the time. I think that's where it ends up landing on the Greenland thing. So